Natalie Manning, 28, stared at her phone, the 7 missed calls from her mother glaring back at her like a warning. She sighed, sipping her now cold coffee as the familiar knot tightened in her stomach. It was that time of year again. Entitlement, the so-called family celebration that for her had always meant one thing: unpaid childcare duty. But this year, she had her own apartment, her own life, and for the first time, financial independence. She wasn't a child anymore, at their beck and call. Still, the weight of expectation pressed down on her as she hesitated before finally answering the inevitable call. Her mother, Margot, wasted no time. "What are your plans for entitlement?" There was something in her tone, a scheming edge that made Natalie wary. "Same as always, I guess," Natalie replied, already feeling the trap closing around her. Margot's voice brightened. "Well, this year is going to be different. Aunt Vivian had a wonderful idea. All of us adults are going on a Caribbean cruise from Entitlement to New Year's Day." Natalie's stomach twisted. "All of us?" She already knew the answer before she asked. "Me too?" "Oh well." Margot hesitated, the false sweetness in her voice barely masking the manipulation. "You have a different important role." The knot in Natalie's stomach turned to ice. "What role?" "Taking care of Chloe, Ethan, and Leo. Since they're too young for a cruise." Silence. "Wait," Natalie said slowly, disbelief laced with rising fury. "So you want me to look after an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old for a whole week while everyone else relaxes on a beach?" "Don't put it like that," Margot said, her tone sharp with irritation. "You love the kids, and besides, you don't have your own children, so this will be good experience for you." The sheer audacity sent a shiver of anger down Natalie's spine. "Mom, I have my own life. I have work deadlines. I have plans with friends." Margot dismissed it with a huff. "But it's for the family, and the tickets are already bought. They're non-refundable." Natalie clenched her jaw, struggling to keep her composure. "When exactly were you going to consult me? Or did you just assume I'd agree?" Her mother laughed lightly, as if Natalie were being ridiculous. "Oh, don't be dramatic. You've always been such a good girl, always putting family first." A cold clarity settled over Natalie. "I'm not a child anymore. I have the right to say no." The silence on the other end was brief but heavy. Then Margot's voice sharpened. "Don't just think about yourself. This is supposed to be a special vacation for everyone. Except me." Margot let out an exasperated sigh. "I can't believe your selfishness is ruining everyone's fun plans." Natalie let out a dry laugh. "Selfish? You're the ones who made these plans without me, expected me to drop everything, and now you're mad that I won't play along. Who's really being selfish here?" "That's enough," Margot snapped. "I'll have your father call you. You'll listen to him." Natalie's voice was steady, final. "If I'm expected to babysit, I won't be coming home for entitlement." Her mother hung up without another word. That night, as Natalie sat in her small but peaceful apartment, her phone continued to buzz, her parents calling, leaving voicemails she ignored. Then a text from Uncle Leon. "Natalie, won't you think about the family?" She smirked, tossing her phone onto the couch. For once, she was thinking about herself. Natalie had long understood that in her family, thinking about the family always meant sacrificing herself. But this time she had drawn a line. Sitting on her sofa, she called her best friend Tessa, who immediately saw through the situation. "So, they're trying to make you babysit again?" she asked. "This time I said no," Natalie replied firmly. "They decided everything without asking me, and I don't have to go along with it." "Good for you," Tessa encouraged. "You've always been too accommodating. You have the right to your own life." Natalie sighed. "They haven't given up. My dad keeps calling." "Don't answer," Tessa warned. "They're just trying to wear you down." Reassured by her friend's unwavering support, Natalie finally picked up the next time her father called. "Dad, my answer hasn't changed." Henry's voice was calm, almost too calm. "We just want you to show some compassion for the family." Natalie scoffed. "Me lacking compassion? You never respect my time or my plans." A pause. Then, "All right, let's spend this year apart. But could you at least come for entitlement morning? The kids really want to see you." That seemed reasonable. No tricks, no demands, just a few hours. "Fine, I'll come for the morning, but stop asking me to babysit." "I promise," her father said. After hanging up, a flicker of unease lingered in her chest. It had been too easy, too smooth. But for the first time, her boundaries had been acknowledged, and that had to count for something. In the weeks leading up to Ethima's, she kept communication minimal. A few text messages, no further mentions of babysitting. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. On Ethima's Eve, she sent a final message. "I'll be there around 11 tomorrow morning. Merry Ethimas," her mother responded almost instantly. "Understood, Natalie. Looking forward to seeing you." A small smile tugged at her lips. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a step toward change. The next morning, she packed the carefully wrapped presents into her car. A young adult novel set for Chloe, a Lego set for Ethan, and a plush animal Leo had been dreaming about. As she drove, humming along to the holiday music on the radio, she told herself it would be a good day. A short visit, smiles, gifts exchanged, and then back to the peace of her own space. But the moment she pulled up to her parents' house, a wave of unease washed over her. Something was off. The driveway was empty. No sign of her parents' car, Aunt Vivian's or Uncle Leon's. The house was lit, but the usual Ethima's chaos was missing. Frowning, she grabbed the presents and rang the doorbell. Within seconds, the sound of small feet pattering across the floor reached her ears. The door swung open, revealing Chloe's bright-eyed face. "Natalie!" the girl beamed, throwing her arms around her. "Merry Ethimas, Chloe," Natalie said warmly, hugging her back. But the tension in her stomach tightened. "Where is everyone?" Chloe tilted her head, blinking innocently. "They all went out. Mom and Dad and the others went on a trip." Natalie's breath hitched. "A trip?" "Yeah," Chloe chirped. "You're gonna take care of us, right?" The word slammed into her like a punch. Natalie stiffened. "No." From behind Chloe, Ethan and Leo came running. "Natalie, did you bring presents?" She forced a smile, her heart pounding. "Of course, let's bring them into the living room first." As she stepped inside, fury bubbled beneath her carefully controlled expression. They had planned this all along. Lied to her. Trapped her. They thought they could manipulate her, that she'd just give in. They had no idea who they were dealing with. As Natalie led the children into the living room, her sharp eyes scanned the house. Everything was neatly arranged. Ethima's decorations twinkling in the soft morning light, a stack of brightly wrapped presents under the tree, and the faint remnants of breakfast on the dining table. But something else caught her attention, a note left conspicuously in the center of the table. Her stomach twisted as she picked it up and read, "To Natalie, we left on the 9 a.m. flight. Breakfast is prepared, and there's a week's worth of meals in the fridge. Follow the instructions. Emergency contacts are on the fridge. Leo's bedtime is 7 p.m., Chloe and Ethan at 8:30 p.m., with love, Mom." Her grip on the paper tightened. They really did it. After all her refusals, after setting clear boundaries, her parents and relatives had outright tricked her into being their unpaid babysitter. The kids, oblivious to the deception, squealed with excitement as they unwrapped their presents. None of this was their fault, but her fury burned nonetheless. "I need to make a quick call," she said with forced calm, stepping into the kitchen as she dialed her mother's number. The phone rang several times before Margot finally answered, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Oh, Natalie, have you arrived? How are the kids?" Natalie cut straight to the point, her voice ice cold. "What the hell were you thinking?" Margot let out a patronizing sigh. "Now, sweetheart, calm down. We knew you'd come. You're responsible, and we knew you wouldn't abandon your family." Natalie's jaw clenched. "I am not your babysitter. I agreed to stop by for Ethimas morning, not to be dumped with 3 kids for an entire week while you lounge on a cruise. But you're already there," Margot reasoned smoothly. "You can't just leave now. The kids are relying on you." A bitter laugh escaped Natalie's lips. "You know what this is, right? Child neglect. I wonder what would happen if I called the police and reported that 3 minors were abandoned while their parents skipped town." There was an audible gasp from the other end. "You wouldn't do that, would you?" "Try me," Natalie said flatly. "You have exactly 1 hour to get back here before I take the kids to the police station. Your choice." Margot's confidence cracked. Wait, we're still at the airport. The flight hasn't left yet." "Then cancel it," Natalie snapped. "I'm staying here for 1 more hour. If you're not back, I'm making that call." Without waiting for a response, she hung up. Her heart pounded as she stepped back into the living room. She forced a smile, pushing down her anger. "Hey everyone, your parents will be back soon. Why don't we have some fun until then?" The kids cheered, and for the next 45 minutes Natalie kept them entertained with board games, Ethimas stories, and cookies. Despite her fury, she refused to let them see it. They were innocent in all this. As the hour neared its end, she debated whether she'd really make that police call. But she didn't have to. At the 50-minute mark, she heard the distant hum of cars approaching. Peering through the window, she saw her parents' vehicle pulling up, along with Aunt Vivian and Uncle Leon. Cowards, she thought. They must have realized she wasn't bluffing. "Look, everyone's back!" Chloe squealed, running to the door. Ethan and Leo followed, laughing excitedly. Natalie grabbed her bag and stood near the entrance, watching as the kids joyfully greeted their parents. Margot approached hesitantly, a nervous smile plastered on her face. "Natalie, please, let's not make this a big deal. It's entitlement. Let's spend time together as a family." A bitter smirk crossed Natalie's lips. "Family?" she echoed. "Now I know exactly what I am to you. Just a tool for your convenience." Margot's smile faltered. "You don't mean that. Don't use me ever again," Natalie said firmly. She turned to the children and ruffled their hair gently. "Merry entitlement, guys. I'll see you around." And with that, she quietly slipped out the back door. As she reached her car, she heard raised voices from inside the house. Henry's sharp tone stood out. Her father was furious. He was scolding Margot and Vivian, no doubt for dragging him into this mess. Natalie inhaled deeply, feeling the cool winter air fill her lungs. There was anger, yes, but there was also something else. Relief. She had stood up for herself. For the first time, she hadn't let them guilt-trip or manipulate her. The next day, Natalie spent a quiet morning in her apartment, sipping coffee while ignoring the flood of missed calls and messages from her family. She responded to texts from friends, but left everything else unread. They had made their choice. And now, so had she. Natalie hadn't expected peace, but she also hadn't anticipated the firestorm that followed. That afternoon, as she casually scrolled through Facebook, a single post made her breath hitch with fury. Her mother, Margot, had written a passive-aggressive status dripping with martyrdom. It was a sad entitlement. "It hurts to know that some people don't care about their own family. The children were disappointed, and our plans were ruined. I never thought our family bond could be so fragile." The comments poured in. "What a pity, Margot. The younger generation lacks responsibility. Family is the most important thing. It's sad when someone doesn't understand that." The blatant manipulation was almost laughable, almost. Natalie's hands shook as she took screenshots. Her mother hadn't mentioned her name, but it was obvious who the villain of the story was meant to be. And the worst part, people believed it. Her anger solidified into resolve. Enough. For years she had swallowed her frustration, let them control the narrative, allowed them to treat her like an afterthought unless they needed something. But not this time. With a deep breath, Natalie began typing her own post, fingers moving swiftly over the keyboard. "Since my family has decided to misrepresent what happened, I think it's only fair that I set the record straight. Yesterday, I visited my parents' house for a entitlement morning. I had made it very clear beforehand that I would not be available to babysit for a week while they went on vacation. They ignored that, left anyway, and tried to trap me into caring for 3 children against my will. When I threatened to report them for child neglect, they magically found a way to come back, and yet I'm the one being painted as selfish? Let's be clear, family is about respect. It is not about entitlement, manipulation, or forcing someone into unpaid labor under the guise of helping out. I have been expected to put my own life aside for others' convenience for far too long. But this time I said no, and I stand by that." She stared at the words, rereading them, checking for any unnecessary emotion. It was firm, it was factual, and most importantly, it was final. With a steadying breath, she hit post. The response was immediate. First came the messages of support. Tessa commented first, "You did the right thing. I'm proud of you." More followed, friends, acquaintances, even distant colleagues chiming in. "I've been there. You're absolutely right. Just because they're family doesn't mean they're entitled to treat you like a servant." But then, the real shock came. Her grandfather, Walter, commented publicly, "Natalie, call me when you can. We need to talk." A few minutes later, her grandmother, Eleanor, wrote something even more direct. "Margot, Henry, Vivian, Leon, I am disappointed in all of you. You owe Natalie an apology." Natalie's heart clenched. For the first time in her life, someone in her family was standing up for her. She called her grandfather immediately. His voice was warm but firm. "That was rough, kiddo." "Yeah," Natalie exhaled. It was awful. I've spoken to your mother, he continued. Her actions were inexcusable, and Henry's no better. Vivian and Leon? Just as guilty. What they did was irresponsible, not just toward you, but toward the kids. Natalie felt her throat tighten. They're making me out to be the villain. They're wrong. Walter's voice didn't waver. You did what any adult should, set boundaries. They just didn't like hearing the word no. Give them time. Let them sit with it. Your grandmother and I will handle things from here. For the first time in days, she felt a sliver of relief. Thank you, Grandpa. But her relief was short-lived. That night, her phone erupted with notifications. Margot's newest status accused her of airing private family matters for attention. Henry wrote, "It's time Natalie grew up and stopped acting like a victim." Vivian and Leon jumped in, calling her ungrateful and a disgrace to the family. Then came the cousins, aunts, uncles, people who hadn't spoken to her in months, suddenly eager to weigh in. The flood of disapproval was overwhelming, but something unexpected happened alongside it. Her post was spreading. Friends of friends were sharing it. Strangers were commenting. Other people she didn't even know, were telling their own stories. I've been through this too. The guilt-tripping, the favoritism, the expectation to sacrifice yourself because that's what family does. You did the right thing. They only call it family values when it benefits them. You are not wrong. You are not selfish. You are free. Natalie's phone buzzed nonstop. Eventually overwhelmed, she turned it off and went to sleep. The next morning, she woke up to a call from Tessa. Natalie, her voice was practically vibrating with excitement. Things have blown up. Natalie never expected her post to explode the way it did. When Tessa called her the next morning, practically buzzing with excitement, Natalie was still groggy, unaware of how far things had spiraled. Your post is everywhere, Tessa told her. Blogs are covering it. Online news sites are talking about family boundaries. It's gone viral. Natalie blinked, rubbing the sleep from her eyes as she reached for her phone. Notifications flooded her screen. Thousands of shares, comments, and messages from strangers who resonated with her experience. Some thanked her for speaking out. Others shared their own stories of being taken advantage of by family under the guise of duty. I didn't mean for this, she muttered. I know, Tessa said gently, but a lot of people did. That afternoon, something even more shocking happened. Her mother, Margot, made another public post. I need to clarify the situation. My previous post was written in the heat of the moment. My husband, my brother-in-law, and I had unfair expectations of our daughter, Natalie. We did not respect her wishes and tried to use her as a free babysitter. Her reaction was completely justified. I publicly apologize. Natalie stared at the screen, unable to believe what she was reading. A public apology? From Margot? It was unthinkable. But something felt off. A moment later, a text from her grandfather confirmed her suspicions. Margot and I had a long talk. Their behavior was shameful. Your parents, Aunt Vivian, and Uncle Leon agreed to apologize, but I don't think it's enough. They have been using you for years, Natalie. This should be addressed legally. Natalie frowned. A legal standpoint? That seemed extreme. But that night, her hesitation vanished. Ignoring more missed calls from her mother, she finally opened an email from her father. The contents sent her blood boiling. Natalie, we have apologized publicly, but you also need to reconsider your actions. Threatening to call the police for child neglect was excessive. We only asked you to watch the children for a few days. Your overreaction has embarrassed the entire family. Because of this, I will no longer allow you to attend family gatherings. Natalie's hands shook with fury. So that was it. The so-called apology had been nothing but damage control, a way to save face while still blaming her. And now, they were punishing her for refusing to be manipulated. She didn't hesitate this time. She called her grandfather immediately. Grandpa, Dad just sent me an email saying I'm banned from family gatherings. The deep sigh on the other end of the line told her everything. Unacceptable. They still haven't learned anything. His voice was cold with anger. Natalie, you need to speak with a lawyer. This is harassment. Encouraged by his words, Natalie scheduled a consultation with a family law attorney the very next day. When she explained the situation, she expected a lukewarm response, maybe some reassurance that she should simply cut ties. But attorney Charlotte Gale took a very different stance. Miss Manning, this isn't just a family dispute. The continued harassment, the public defamation, they are engaging in psychological coercion. The posts your parents made could be considered libelous. Natalie hesitated. Should I really sue? Charlotte leaned forward, her voice steady. Let's start by sending a legal warning. If they continue this behavior, we escalate. Natalie agreed. Within the hour, the lawyer sent a formal cease and desist letter to Margot, Henry, Vivian, and Leon, warning them that further harassment would lead to legal consequences. But instead of backing down, her mother doubled down. Margot took to social media again, this time in full attack mode. My ungrateful daughter is now trying to sue her own family. After everything we've done for her, what kind of child turns against the people who raised her? Henry, not to be outdone, chimed in with his own post. Natalie has always been emotionally unstable. She exaggerates everything. We tried to apologize, but she would rather destroy her own family. Vivian and Leon joined the chorus, calling her attention-seeking and claiming that her version of events was pure fabrication. Natalie read their words, feeling a strange sense of detachment. A year ago, this would have devastated her. Now it only solidified one thing. They had no power over her anymore. They thought they could shame her into silence. They thought they could manipulate her into backing down. They were wrong. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Natalie had endured enough. The public humiliation, the manipulation, the years of being cast aside while her family treated her as nothing more than a disposable convenience, it ended now. After another consultation with her attorney, she made the difficult but necessary decision to file a lawsuit for defamation and emotional distress. Miss Manning, I know this isn't easy, Attorney Gale told her gently. But this is about protecting yourself. They've crossed too many lines. On the day the lawsuit was officially filed, Natalie felt a storm of emotions. She had once loved her family despite their flaws, had held on to the hope that one day they would see her, respect her, value her. But this wasn't just about entitlement or a few cruel words. It was about years of neglect, manipulation, and outright mistreatment. This lawsuit wasn't just a response to what they had done recently. It was a reckoning for everything they had put her through. Her grandparents, Walter and Eleanor, stood by her unwaveringly, even offering to testify on her behalf. Other relatives, however, were forced to pick sides. Some stood with her, acknowledging the injustice she had suffered, but many clung to the toxic idea of family unity, choosing to ignore the truth in favor of keeping the status quo. Her parents, Aunt Vivian and Uncle Leon, responded by completely cutting her off, as if disowning her was their final act of control. But the trial moved faster than expected. Her lawyer methodically laid out the long history of favoritism, emotional manipulation, and financial exploitation. The entitlement incident was only the final, public display of a pattern that had gone unchecked for years. The most damning evidence came in the form of social media screenshots, Margot's public smear campaign, Henry's gaslighting, and the degrading messages sent by Vivian and Leon. Each post, each insult, each cruel attempt to turn others against her was displayed in court for everyone to see. Her grandparents' testimony was a turning point. Walter, usually a man of few words, spoke with quiet, undeniable authority, detailing the way Natalie had been treated since childhood, how she had always been the afterthought, the responsible one burdened with obligations while her sister was endlessly coddled. Eleanor, holding back tears, described how they had begged her parents to treat her fairly, only to be dismissed time and time again. When the verdict was finally delivered, the courtroom fell silent. The court finds that the actions of Margot Manning, Henry Manning, Vivian Miller, and Leon Miller constitute clear harassment of Natalie Manning and have caused severe emotional distress. Family relationships should be built on mutual respect, and the defendant's actions have violated this fundamental principle. A restraining order was issued against her parents and aunt and uncle, legally barring them from further harassment. The court also ruled in Natalie's favor, awarding her significant damages for defamation and emotional distress. More than that, it ordered her parents and aunt and uncle to publicly retract their statements and issue a formal apology, ensuring they could no longer twist the narrative in their favor. As she stepped out of the courtroom, Natalie exhaled, feeling lighter than she had in years. There was sadness, of course. She had fought for her dignity but had likely lost any chance at a real relationship with her family. Still, as her grandfather pulled her into a warm embrace, his voice was steady. "You did the right thing, sweetheart. Time may heal, or it may not, but you had every right to stand up for yourself, and I've never been prouder." In the weeks that followed, the consequences of the trial rippled outward, shattering the carefully constructed images her parents and relatives had built for themselves. Henry, once a respected figure at his company, lost the trust of his colleagues. With his reputation in ruins, he was quietly pushed into early retirement after 35 years. Margot, whose social standing had once been the foundation of her self-worth, was asked to step down from the PTA. The invitations to social gatherings stopped coming, and the community she had once ruled with judgmental whispers now turned its back on her. Vivian and Leon, who had always prided themselves on their small business, watched helplessly as their customers dwindled. The public backlash was relentless. The same people who had once gossiped about Natalie now whispered about them, about how they had tried to manipulate their own niece and been publicly exposed for it. Within 6 months, their business collapsed. Struggling financially, they lost their home and were forced to downsize to a modest apartment far from the affluent neighborhood they had once flaunted. For the first time, they all experienced what it was like to be dismissed, disregarded, and treated as an afterthought. Meanwhile, Natalie flourished. She poured herself into her work, strengthened her friendships, and built a life where she was no longer waiting for validation from people who had never truly cared. The wounds they had inflicted would take time to fully heal, but the weight of years of mistreatment had finally been lifted. One evening, as she sat in her apartment sipping tea and watching the city lights flicker outside her window, her phone buzzed with a message from her grandmother. "Thinking of you, darling. You are strong and you are loved." Natalie smiled, setting the phone down. She had lost a family that had never truly been hers. But in the process, she had found something even more valuable: herself. Natalie maintained a careful relationship with her grandparents and the children, but had no contact with her parents or aunt and uncle. When Chloe turned 18, she left her parents' house and moved in with Natalie. Ethan and Leo gradually began to distance themselves from their parents as well. Their care, it seemed, had been left to outside babysitters since Natalie left. 10 years later, Natalie had a successful career and was surrounded by her true family, her husband and daughter, whom she had chosen herself. She had gained her freedom for the first time by breaking away from her biological family. Occasionally, the pain of the past would hit her, but each time she reassured herself that her choices were right. "I have no place in my life for those who treated me like a tool," she told her therapist. "It might sound harsh, but it was necessary to protect myself." The wounds inflicted by her family never fully healed, but Natalie continued to walk her path with pride. The fate of her parents and her aunt and uncle served as a harsh lesson to those who continuously exploit others.